Right, so the first solid principle is the single responsibility principle. Let me just bring in the explanation of what it is. Essentially, the definition is a modular class should only have one reason to change, meaning it should only have one job or responsibility. An example of this is separating logic for handling user details and the logic for saving user details or the data into two distinct functions or components. So the pros for this are improved maintainability, enhanced readability, and reducing the complexity as well, because essentially we should all be striving to have clear, simple code that anyone can understand, not just developers. That's the key in this. So implementing these features, we want to keep it simple. That's it really. So essentially it should make more sense really, that all we need to do is, if we're defining something, it should just have one single responsibility. So let me show you a bad example first of all. And this is violating the CSP. So what I need to do actually is import React at the top. And if you haven't got this, you just need to install it. So you just do npm i react and react DOM for this, or you in your existing React project, you should have it as well. And again, let me just actually move this into my TSX file because we're working with HTML, so, or JSX should I say. So in this example here, we are violating the SRP, or the single responsibility principle, because you can see here we have const of user and set user, which takes in the name and email. Then we have a use effect, which updates the name and email, which happens on mount when the component mounts, which is fine because then it updates it here. And we also have save user, which is a method that essentially when we click it, it saves the user's details to the database. So that's fine. But is this a single responsibility? No, it's not, because what it's doing is it's doing quite a lot of different things in here. So it's setting the state empty, then it's updating the state, and then we also have this method in here. So what we should do is we should have this handle one logic, which is the name and email, and then this one handles the method, which is save user. So we should split it out into separate components. So let me just copy or comment this out, and let's bring in the correct example over here. So this example is basically separating it out, having its responsibility. So this is what we are striving to achieve. So here you can see user profile takes in a user, it renders out the user.name and then the user.email. And then this one is basically handling the save user button. So in our React component over here, we now have the user, which sets state, and then the user effect, which again sets the user, which is fine. And essentially the save user again. But now in the JSX, or the return block, we are now rendering the two components out. So this component we know is going to render the user name and email, and then this component here we know is going to render or be able to have the ability to save the user details. So we're passing in the function down into its subcomponent or the child component, and then these are the components that we have declared over here. So this is adhering to single responsibility. So if we go to the definition, it should have only one reason to change, meaning it should only have one job or responsibility. So now that's what we are doing. And again, you can look at the maintainability improvements, enhanced readability, and again, reduce complexity. Again, what I would suggest is separate these out into their own files. So this one will be user profile.tsx, and then this one is save user button.tsx. They could be in the same folder, but separate files. That makes it easier to test them because they have a single responsibility, and that's very simple because all you do is render this component with the onSave method, and it should save the user. Again, it should render the username, it should render user email. This is very simple to do, and again, anyone can read that and understand what it's doing, especially if you're just looking at only this code here. It takes in a user, it destructures the user, and then you can get username and user email. So separating it into its own file is another thing that you should do, along with making sure that it has the single responsibility. That's the most important thing as well to mention. So that is the single responsibility principle. What we will look at next is the open close principle.